listening to the Hunter Conservationist Podcast.
And the counter's rolling. Happy New Year, folks.
Yeah.
We have a great year ahead. I'm really excited about where 2026 is going to take us. 2025 was amazing. Guests learned so much. Just time blew by. It's like being connected to a rocket ship right now with Wild Origins Canada, the Origins Foundation. There's just so much going on worldwide. Really excited about the Hunter Conservationist Podcast. I think in July will be the end of year 7, the start of year 8 for this show, if I have it right. So this episode is going to be about paying for conservation. Hunting in Alberta has what's known as the user benefit pay model. It's where the user of the resource, hunters, they're taking, so they pay into a pot, they contribute, money comes from the hunting industry, from hunters themselves, and then that goes back into the resource. The Alberta Conservation Association, in my opinion, is one of the best examples, if not the best example in Canada, of the agency that puts those hunter dollars back into the resource for the benefit of all Albertans. What I love about ACA is it's like on the ground, boots on the ground work, doing projects, doing research, managing actual habitat projects, gathering data so government can make decisions about the resource and allocation of wildlife and different things like that. And you're not just a grant organization. You're not just got this pot of money and you adjudicate all this award money out and then do nothing for the rest of the year. Like, you're just a really pragmatic, practical, on the ground organization. You do deliver grants, but it doesn't consume, from what I understand, people's entire careers are not dedicated to just doing nothing but grants all day. It's like you do some grants and then it's like, I got all this cool stuff on the go that we're doing for Albertans. Hunters' dollars going back into the resource has really been the backbone of the conservation model in North America. It's used a lot to defend hunting. Hey, we're the ones paying for this. Hunters' money has brought all of these, species back. Sustainable hunting has helped recover various species. Hunters pay for the resource. And I hear folks say often other outdoor folks should be paying for this as well if hunters are going to be paying for it. So one of the questions I want to explore is, okay, what if they did? What if they started paying into the system that hunters pay in as part of the user benefit pay model? And what if they started paying more than hunters? So we're going to learn about what the Alberta Conservation Association does and explore this question, this conundrum with Todd. Hey, everybody, it's Mark Hall, your host.
And it's Curtis Hall, your co-host. The Hunter Conservationist Podcast is brought to you by J. Martin Taxidermy. J. Martin Taxidermy is a family-run business owned and operated by Jesse Martin, his wife Casey, and their 2 young boys. Born and raised in the sunny Okanagan Valley, Jesse grew up immersed in the outdoors. Like his father and grandfather, he spent his childhood hunting and fishing, surrounded by taxidermy in a home that felt more like a museum than a house. From an early age, he learned how a well-crafted mount preserves more than an animal. It preserves a story. Jesse pursued wildlife and forestry conservation and started doing taxidermy for friends, which quickly grew into a lifelong passion. Today, J. Martin Taxidermy is based in West Kelowna, British Columbia, operating out of a clean, modern facility and serving clients from around the world. Specializing in shoulder mounts, rugs, life-size mounts, and fully custom dioramas, every piece is carefully crafted to deliver the most lifelike and accurate representation of your animal. Jesse's fully certified and insured. He handles all the permits and inspections for international export, so your memories are preserved with the same care they are created with. So, as always, big shout out. Thanks to Jesse. Continuing this year, he's with us for another year. So again, thanks, Jesse. This is year 3 as our title sponsor. Yes. Yeah, there we go. So huge shout out.
He's along for the ride.
Yeah. Thank you, Jesse. We really appreciate it.
So on previous shows I've been doing the little thing about the little fact about taxidermy, little historical thing, did you know type thing. I'm going to change it up a little bit. So this is kind of a taxidermy question. So the first 10 people that either message us through Instagram or on Facebook, or you can send me an email at mark@thewildorigins.org that get the right answer to this. You won't be able to see this if you're listening to the podcast, but it's a Wild Origins Canada decal, first 10 people. Here's the question. So you probably know that the eyes in the mounted animals are made of glass. So here's the question. Are those eyes solid glass spheres? Are they solid half spheres, or are they hollow solid half spheres? Okay, so that's the skill testing question. Get a hold of us if you know the answer. First 10 people, Wild Origins Canada decal. Dr. Todd Zimmerling, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm not going to win one of your decals. I have no idea. I'd have to go check Google like everybody else is going to.
Yeah, that's what everybody else is going to do, right? So,
yeah.
So that's okay. That's better than getting a screwdriver and going to one of the mounts on the wall, because don't do that, folks, because your mount is worth more than the decal. So
yeah, my wife would be upset. All mounts are her mounts, so yeah.
Okay. If that's your only option, like you don't have the internet or something, just let me know. I would find out if I could destroy one of my mounts. I'll send you a decal anyways. So you're the president and CEO of the Alberta Conservation Association. How long have you been in that role?
I've been in this role for 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been a journey for sure.
Wow. I bet you there's a whole podcast in there in the beginning, the early years, how long's the association been?
The association started in 1997. I guess it'd be 28 years.
Okay, so they were just a decade-ish, got their feet underneath, and then you came in and grabbed hold of the helm. Very cool.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So give us the breakdown of the Alberta Conservation Association, what you do, people you got, projects that you have on the go. Where does your dollars come from? I think that's a big one as well.
Sure. Yeah. Like you mentioned in the intro there, the Conservation Association is pretty unique. We're not an organization that you can buy a membership to, so you as an individual can't become a member of the Alberta Conservation Association. We are made up of 10 conservation organizations within Alberta. So we've got representation on our board of directors from 10 different groups with a wide variety, everything from the Alberta Trappers, the Alberta Hunter Education Instructors Association, the Outfitters, Freshwater Conservation Canada, so it used to be TU, Nature Alberta. So a wide range of conservation groups sit on our board. In addition to that, we've got some academic reps sit on the board, we've got public at large sit on the board, and we've got a couple of government reps sit on the board. So as you might expect, we've got a board of, I believe it's 18 people. So wide array of different opinions on various topics. But what I've really found has been great working here is all those different opinions, everybody's got the same end goal. Like everybody understands that there might be different ways to get there, but everybody's trying to get to the same end goal. So that makes us, I think, really quite unique across the country, maybe across North America. We are an organization, we have 80 staff, about 65 of those would be biologists, and we're spread across Alberta. And we do projects under 4 main program areas. So one of the big ones is actually our communications, information, and engagement program area, which, as well, you know how important communication is. That's why you're doing what you do. A lot of biologists see, what's on the ground work. Well, the on ground work is important, but if you can't get the message out as to what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it's important, getting people engaged to support you, then you don't get much work done. You get the first project and then it dies because nobody knew why it was important to do in the first place. So that's a big part of what we do. A lot of work with various groups in the province, the government, and getting the message out about conservation, about promoting hunting, angling, and trapping, and basically trying to get people engaged in the outdoors and do those kinds of things that we believe in. And then, of course, we have our land management program area, and that is mostly around habitat. So we do a combination of purchasing habitats, purchasing private lands, oftentimes in partnership with other conservation groups. We work very closely with the Alberta Wildlife Federation, for instance, sometimes with Pheasants Forever, depending upon where exactly we are. So right now, we've got 51,000 acres of land that is under private title. and all of those lands are open to the public for foot access. So the issue around trying to ask permission to get on lands isn't a problem if you come and use one of these conservation sites that we manage. And on top of that, we manage another couple 100,000 acres of land on behalf of the provincial governments on Crown land. So that's a big part of what we do on the habitat side of things. We also work closely with the federal government. Have received a lot of funding around species at risk, so trying to do habitat work related to sage grouse, for instance, and a number of different projects related to piping plovers and various species at risk. So we're not just all about the big game or the huntable species. We're doing species at risk work as well. We also work very closely with our ranching and farming community. In Alberta, a big chunk of the province, the southern half of the province, for the most part, is privately owned. And so the reality is, if you're going to do conservation work, you're going to have to figure out how to deal with the people who actually own the land. How do you talk their language? How do you make it worth their while? How do you make them sort of see what the issues are, but at the same time understand what their issues are? And I think that's one thing our biologists have done a really good job at, is creating really strong relationships with the ranching community in particular. They have learned over the years that it is very ineffective to come out of school with knowing everything you know about being a biologist and what is right, and then go knocking on ranchers' door and say, "Here, I'm here to tell you what you're doing wrong." That just simply doesn't work. And when I say it like that, it seems pretty simple. Why do you? But there's a lot of biologists that come out of school thinking it's just a matter of just educating people of what the right thing is to do, and we'd get more conservation done. Our guys they've been through a lot of trial and error, a lot of listening, have learned very well that no, this is a give and take kind of situation. This is people's livelihoods we're talking about on their ranches, and so you should sit down and talk to them as what would work for them. If we want to try and improve habitat, what can we do that would help them, while at the same time improving the habitat for whatever species we happen to be concerned with? So that's a big part of what we do as well, which I think makes us quite unique. Then we have a big wildlife program. Some of the bigger projects, you're familiar with the mule deer collaring project, which we're doing in partnership with the Alberta Outfitters Society here in Alberta, and that is something that's never been done in Alberta before. We've got several hundred collars on mule deer down in southern Alberta, and we're hoping to do a long-term project on their habitat use, what is killing them, what the mortality factors are, migration routes, those kinds of things. Get a better handle on what we might be able to do for improving the management of them. We're doing a similar kind of project for pronghorn down in the southeast corner of the province. Just last week, put another 150 collars on, so we're close to 300 collars on pronghorn, and we're partnering up with Saskatchewan, and now Montana has joined in, so it's an international project at this point. So those are pretty big, exciting projects, dealing with turkeys, trying to increase the turkey population here in Alberta. Last year, I believe we had something like 17,000 people applied for a tag to be able to hunt a turkey here in Alberta, and we gave out less than 100. So that just tells you how popular the idea of hunting turkeys is in Alberta. So we're trying to see if we can satisfy some of that urge. There's no way we're going to get to be able to fulfill 17,000 hunters a year, but hopefully we can improve your chances of getting drawn for a tag in the near future. And then we also have a very large fisheries program where we do everything from stock a bunch of put and take fisheries with rainbow trout, so put them in the spring, expecting that people will fish them out by the fall and winter kind of thing, to doing surveys for bull trout, working on walleye inventories. We've been running a longer term project on burbot, a fish species that has, I'd say for the most part, been overlooked in a lot of locations. We're trying to get a handle on what are the populations like in Alberta, and do we have to worry about regulation changes or anything like that? Right now in Alberta, most places you can fish burbot and keep at least 10 per day in the middle of February, March during their spawning, and we can take them right off the spawning grounds. So again, you don't necessarily have to be a biologist to know that maybe that could be an issue in some situations. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at. We have a unique relationship with government in that we are what is called a delegated administrative organization under the Wildlife Act. So in the Act, basically, we have been given the ability to receive funds directly off of hunting and fishing licenses in the province. So roughly, I would say 65, 70% of whatever you happen to spend on whatever license it happens to be comes to ACA to fund conservation work. As a result of that, we work closely with them, sit down every year and look at, well, what are the priorities for the government? What are the major concerns that they have to work on, and where can we help to try and collect information for them? We don't make regulatory changes, we don't do enforcement, but we provide information to the government to make regulation change or enforcement changes, whatever it happens to be. So we'll collect those data for the government in that way. So as much as possible, we try to make sure we're partnering with other conservation groups and working with the general public and get them involved. Overall, we run on a budget of roughly $20 million. About 15, 16 million comes out of hunting and fishing revenue, and the rest of it is donations, corporate donations, private donations, as well as a number of grants from federal and provincial government. So that's a very long explanation of what we do, but I would say we're a mile wide and hopefully a little more than an inch deep, but we do a lot. We undertake a lot.
That is amazing. I just love listening to everything that you have on the go. The private land relationships and enhancing habitat. Doug Manzer, who works with you, took us out a couple summers ago to a private land property in South Central Alberta, where working with the landowner, enhancing upland game bird habitat, pheasants, a partridge, and some waterfowl stuff. And yeah, like literally, Doug's like, oh, we're doing this and that. And the landowner would like this, but he needs his field. That's his money. So it's a circular field, but we've got these four corners, which has got this type of edge habitat. And so that just made me remember what you had said about understanding what they need. It's their livelihood, and section of land with this circular crop in it leaves you four corners. Makes sense, right? Circle in a box.
Yep.
Well, that's where Doug was in there looking at graduating the types of habitat for nesting versus feeding versus brood habitat for gray partridge. And so fascinating. Like I really saw what you said about connecting with the landowner, and like he just had a great relationship with him. We saw him and his wife were walking, and he's like, he stopped, and there was no like, what are you doing on my land? It was just like, yep, you're here doing your job. Couple questions. Do any fees from trapping licenses in the province come to ACA?
No, there are no fees from trapping licenses. No.
Okay.
But
okay.
Most trappers are hunters and anglers, so they're definitely
they're getting a license.
Yeah.
Through any of your work with, like, say, a corporate donation, are you available like on a project basis? Like, let's say an oil company came to you and we got these pipelines, we've got this, it's endangered habitat, we need to do some offset work. If we give you $1 million, can you be the delivery agent for projects monitoring, data collection, anything like that?
Yeah, we've definitely done a fair bit of offset work for essentially very much as you suggested on the habitat side of things. Most of that work has been a matter of, well, we'd like to do some type of offset. Here's $1 million. Can you go purchase land that will offset, any of the damage? A lot of it has been done. We've worked a lot for over a decade with Shell on a long-term project with them. We've worked with Suncor, Total. A lot of major oil companies have come to us to look at offset processes. Some of it's been on a voluntary basis. Some of it has been a regulatory requirement, but it's all resulted in us, being able to purchase either purchase high quality habitat or purchase habitat we were able to restore back to high quality habitat.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great relationship there, because agriculture, oil and gas sector, the backbone of the province, and you're merging these two great industry and resources together. Very, very important aspect in Alberta. Anything else that you got on the go, like kids programs, fun, like special camps, like getting people interested in hunting and fishing, like kind of that recruitment part?
Yeah, so most of our recruitment, I would say, is done through our Kids Can Catch program. So we're not really doing as much. Well, I was going to say we're not doing as much on the hunting side, but I guess the Tabor Pheasant Festival would consider a giant recruitment program. That's a week-long festival in Tabor every year. That we've worked with the local community to promote pheasant hunting, promote basically upland game bird habitat conservation, and trying to make a good example to rural communities of what the benefit of having hunters come to your community is. It's a significant economic driver in locations, especially in shoulder seasons. It's hard to get the average tourist to show up in rural Alberta in October. The weather might be nice or it might not be nice, but a hunter will show up regardless. And so that was a big part of what we were doing with the Tabor Pheasant Festival. But
even crazy places like Cowley.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah.
When pheasant hunting there, like one time, like south of Lethbridge, and it was like the wind was just rocking, and I'm like, how's this work?
Yeah, exactly.
Pheasant pops up out of the tall grass, and it's going to be like a fighter jet taking off. It'll be like 3 counties over by the time.
You need a 50-foot lead on it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they're the diehard tourists.
Yeah, absolutely. On the fishing side, that we've had a very, very successful Kids Can Catch campaign. So, and ACA doesn't run, we run 2 major events. We run one in Fort Saskatchewan in the summer, which is just outside of Edmonton here, and then another one west of Edmonton in February, an ice fishing event. And so those 2 are probably the 2 biggest ones that are in the province, but there's another 30 plus Kids Can Catch events that are run by other groups, local fishing game groups, local community groups, that sort of thing. And our role is really just to support them. So we will provide marketing for them, get the word out. We'll help them get everything set up for the registration. We'll, if required, we'll send them fishing rods and basically make sure that we give them all the support we can. We don't have the resources to go out and run these things all around the province, and to be honest, I think it's more beneficial to get various community groups involved in doing it, and it seems to work really well. I believe this past year surpassed over 30,000 participants in these Kids Can Catch events. So it's a one-day event. People come out. Oftentimes it's a combination of, I would say, 2 major groups. One is the parent that comes and says, I should have been doing this before. I used to do this when I was a kid. My dad used to take me out. I'm glad this happened. I took my kids out. I'm going to start doing it again. And the other major group are new Canadians. They're showing up, and this is Canadiana. Like, this is, if you're Canadian, you go outside fishing, and they just want to learn how to do it. They don't know where to go or how to do it or anything about it. And so they show up, and we get a lot of support. Various mentors coming from, the various fishing groups that might be in the area will show up and show new Canadians how to tie something on, how to cast, what to do once you catch the fish, all those kinds of things. So it's been really good. And it's a lot of fun, I could say, when I'm out there and I actually bump into these people. It makes you feel good about running these events. That this is what we're trying to do: get people excited and interested in being outside, enjoying fishing, saying that I'm going to do this again. I'm going to take my kids out. We're going to try other places, all that kind of stuff. So it's been really popular. So between the Kids Can Catch event and the Tabor Pheasant Festival, I would say those are the 2 major programs that we run. What we do, you mentioned earlier, the granting program. So we do have, we give out roughly about $1.8 million in grants a year, which sounds like a lot, but as I said, our budget is, $20 million. So relative to the rest of it, it's a small fraction, but a good chunk of that money goes to those kinds of engagement projects. So we fund other groups that's more what they do. They're better at it. Alberta Hunter Education Instructors Association, that's their thing. They do that. They get people out there, they mentor them, they show them how to hunt and fish. So, and we give grants to groups like that that they're really specialized in it. I would say we more dabble in it because our biologists think it's fun. They just like to get out there, want to interact with the stakeholders, the people we're trying to engage with. And so that's really, in the end, probably the biggest reason we do it, because it's fun for us to get out there and interact with the people.
Excellent. What I see is exciting about your framework, your model, and you seem to light up when you're talking about this. Like, you are cross-cut through almost the entire system of Alberta. People, corner to corner to corner, like every level from like highest to, like the diversity. You're just, if you did the ACA and then you did the little string, like the crime scenes, the little, it's like it would be the spider web where you're connected to everybody and everything in the province of Alberta. And that just, I can just see it in your face, each one of these different things you talk about. It's like, oh, then ranchers, and then like this program, and just the excitement's there. Like it's a lot of energy in your organization.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, realistically, in the last 3 months, I've sat down and had a face-to-face conversation with the minister, and had a similar type of conversation with a cattle rancher in southern Alberta. Right? So we are all over the place. There's no doubt about it.
All over the place. Now, one aspect of funding that I wanted to touch on, I know, so you got the hunting license, fishing license, so that's residents, and if a guided client comes in, they have to buy their license as well. But you've got access to funds on an annual basis through the minister's special license program, if I understand that right. Maybe explain that just a bit.
So we don't, we have access to it, but it's not like the special license funds come to us. We come to them to manage them as a grant. So our staff are able to put in grants just like everybody else is. And then we've set up an adjudication committee of a bunch of individuals that sit there and independently review them. Sometimes some of our projects get funded, sometimes they don't. Yeah, those funds have been, I think, very valuable to fund a bunch of different conservation activities that are going on within the province. Of course, the ones we're dealing with are the ones that are come through the resident draw. So as a resident, you're able to purchase an extra chance at drawing a tag. That's how that runs, as opposed to the auction funds that APOS runs. But combined, those minister special licenses are producing a lot of funds that are helping out a lot of really good conservation work here in Alberta.
Excellent. And hunter supported, hunter driven funds that are coming through the system, which is kind of where the conversation at the start of the show, the premise for it. So excellent, folks. So two things I recommend you doing. Doesn't matter where you live in the country, go on to the Alberta Conservation Association's website and sign up for their magazine. Like it's not exclusive to Alberta. I get it every issue that comes out, and I want to live in Alberta when I read that magazine. Like it's just seeing all the stuff that's going on. It's just exciting. It gives you ideas. It just shows you the great things that are going on, shows you what's possible. So, if you're somewhere and you're trying to do something and people are like, oh, no, that's not whatever. And you're like, hey, I just got the new ACA magazine, and it's like, they're doing it in Alberta. So let's give this biologist a call. So there's a value in that as well, and signing up for the magazine. So yeah, I encourage you to do that. Maybe Todd's going, that's going to drive my budget up to mailing magazines to Newfoundland or something.
Yeah, well, it amazes me where there's go to. I mean, we mail some overseas. There's people getting them, in Europe, which just shocks me. I do question, it is available online. You could just look at it digitally as well, but some people like the hard copy. So we will mail it. If that's where they want it, we will mail it out.
Perfect. So yeah, dude, check them out online. Check out the website and get the magazine. Sign up for the newsletters. Follow them on social media. Shifting gears. Let's go back to this kind of scenario I painted at the start of the show. You've outlined the framework. You're operating off primarily hunter and angler driven money, putting that money back into a resource that they're taking from. But more than that, it's going back into all kinds of things that aren't necessarily something that a hunter or an angler is going to benefit from, species at risk, whatever. That's for all Albertans, all Canadians when it comes to species at risk. So, there's a saying out there that money's not everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen. So in your field, if you had 20 million, if you had 40 million, you had 100 million, it's like I could continue to just grow. There's no shortage of things that we could be doing for wildlife, for conservation, for ecosystems. So let's kind of dive into this conundrum of getting more users into the systems. There's an aspect of this which I think is around equity and responsibility of citizens. So is it fair to expect that hunters are always shouldering the majority of this work. They're obviously taking in a physical way, removing an elk, removing a pheasant, that sort of thing. So putting back into pheasant habitat, that resonates with people. I'm taking a picture of a pheasant, like I'm not harming the ecosystem, but a hunter may have paid for that pheasant to be there. Is that an equitable system? Is there a responsibility of the wildlife photographer? How do we reconcile that fairness and the tradition of hunters who have supported this, shouldered this, not complained about it, with we could do more for wildlife if more people were paying?
Yeah, I think that's a super complicated question for sure. So we can certainly talk about it, and we'll see how much trouble I get myself into because I don't have enough time to explain myself out of it again. Yeah, the question certainly comes up all the time. There's no doubt about it. As you know, and I sometimes do hear from hunters, why are we the ones we are the only ones that are paying? And in some cases, sure, I can see that, but in other cases, at least in Alberta, I would say one of the benefits of hunters and anglers being the ones that are putting up most of the money is we also, at this point in time, have most of the say in how the resource is being managed. Certainly, there's no doubt about it, the public gets to have their say, but the reality is because hunters and anglers are directly involved, or at least hunting and angling groups are directly involved, when the government is wondering about, should they or shouldn't they, it's the hunting and angling groups that they talk to, because they know that the hunters and anglers at this point are showing the most interest. They will be the ones who raise the most stink if something goes sideways. They'll be the ones that raise the alarm bells if there looks like an issue that needs to be fixed. So from that point of view, if you look at it that way, well, at least if we are the ones putting in most of the money at this point in time, again, at least in Alberta, we are at least getting most of the say in how things are managed.
Okay.
I would certainly say that, sure, there's lots of benefits being provided to rest of Albertans, all the non-hunters. The reality is, last time we did our survey, we have, I think it was 5% of adults Albertans are hunting. So 95% not, but potentially getting advantage out of what the hunting dollar is providing. So yeah, could we get a lot more done if we were able to get more out of the rest of them? For sure. I mean, everything we do is scalable. You double the amount of money, we get double the amount of conservation work being done, for sure. There's very little that we do that we couldn't use more money. We got all we need. I've yet to hear one of my guys say that.
Anybody say that?
Yeah, exactly. So, there's certainly, like I say, as you alluded to, the potential risk in that, of course, is, well, if everybody is now putting in money, does everybody get equal say? And then you end up with this problem where we see it all the time, sort of this tragedy of the commons thing where, well, everybody has say, but not everybody has the same level of passion for it or knowledge about the issue. And there might be a lot more issues around, well, somebody saw a 10-second snippet on social media and that's how the decisions are being driven, as opposed to those of us who are sort of in the trenches right now that have a little better understanding of those issues and can make, I would say, probably a more informed decision on which way should be going on one issue or the others. It is certainly, it's certainly a balancing act that we'd have to look at for sure.
The two interesting parts about what you said there's like a governance piece to this user benefit pay model system. And there's like a cultural tension almost kind of thing, the users that take hunters and anglers versus, the ones that, the consumptive, non-consumptive, that's a whole debate in itself, whether wildlife viewing or hiking is non-consumptive, or not. But I think it's an easy way, like a backpacker doesn't go home with a moose, a hunter does. So let's just say there was a backcountry license. You want to step off the pavement, camp, hike, take pictures, whatever. You've got this backcountry license. That's the other, maybe not the total 95% of the population, but say it was 75% of that 90%, right? All of a sudden, that's a lot of money. That's more than the hunters are generating. So then that becomes the question that you alluded to. Should they have more influence? Like under a governance system, should they be setting priorities? Should they have a greater say in where the dollars go? The cultural tension part then becomes the non-consumptive users versus the consumptive users. Well, we want this whole big area set aside and no access, no hunting, versus we want to set this area aside but enhance the habitat so it grows bigger mule deer, more bigger bucks or something like that, right? And you end up with this cultural tension with who is paying the most kind of thing. How do you reconcile those pieces?
Well, I mean, I think I would suggest that tension already exists, right?
Okay. Yep.
It's regardless of how much money anybody's putting into it, we still have the general public saying we would like this set aside or not set aside. Well, in British Columbia, for instance, there isn't a grizzly bear hunt anymore. Why did that happen? Well, because the general public said we didn't want a grizzly bear. It wasn't because somebody said there's no grizzly bears to hunt or there's some conservation issue related to it. The general public just decided that we don't like that idea, and so it was shut down. So what it really says to me is hunters have to be really, really, really careful. Anglers to some extent as well, but I think hunters are they're a much higher risk of losing their privilege, which is something I think a lot of hunters have to keep in mind. You don't have a right to hunt unless you happen to have that enshrined within the Constitution, which most of us don't. We don't have a right. It's a privilege. And so it is something where we have to make sure that we are keeping the other 95%. Well, I won't say 95% because there's at least 20% we will never get to our side. So let's say the other 75% on side. They don't have to want to hunt, but they have to be in a position where they don't dislike hunting. They're not anti-hunting. They understand why we hunt. They understand the conservation values. They understand the importance of hunting for management purposes. So if we do our job as hunters to ensure those people understand why it's okay that we're doing that, then we have a lot lower risk of asking them for money and worried that they will use that as leverage. But right now, they already have the leverage. And that is, the reality is hunting could be removed if that big chunk of the population that right now, they don't really have a strong opinion. If for some reason they end up with a strong opinion going the other way. And that's something I think a lot of hunters will rail against. It's, oh, they can't take it. Well, actually, they can take it away. There's no doubt about it. It's been done for individual species in many provinces at just the whim of the general public. And I say the whim, but reality, that's how a democracy works, right? If the majority say they don't want it, it doesn't happen. So it's something that we have to keep in mind. Now, that doesn't mean we don't want to ask for money. I think our job is to ensure that group of people see, well, we set this habitat aside as a result of our conservation dollars that came from hunters, but is actually benefiting you because now you can go hiking there and you can pick berries with your kids or take pictures or whatever it might be. You can do all of those things. And so wouldn't it be nice if you contributed some money? And I don't want to shortchange all of the non-hunters that have contributed to ACA. So we do get people, they're not hunters, but they have no problem with hunting. We get people donating land to us that they're not hunters, but they understand why hunting happens, and it's okay. They don't mind it. So there are a good number of people out there that have certainly contributed to ACA. In my mind, I think the better way to go, maybe not better, a way to go is looking at, is it the Pittman-Robertson Act, I believe, in the States, where essentially every piece of outdoor equipment has a tax on it?
Yeah, Pittman-Roberts is firearms, ammunition. Dingell-Johnson is fishing equipment, marine, fuel, slightly different.
Yeah, so that's the one I'm thinking more of. But yeah, like outdoor equipment would be something. The government, you talked about potentially having a, out getting or stepping off the pavement kind of, you got to pay, a $20 fee to step off pavement kind of deal, right?
Your backcountry license, whatever.
Yeah. Well, the government came out with a survey this past year looking at, how are we going to deal with the issue around invasive species, being aquatic invasive species, mussels on boats, right? And the vast majority of boats out there nowadays on Alberta lakes are not anglers. They're people who are out there just enjoying skiing around, wakeboarding around, whatever it might be. None of them are putting any money into conservation work that is coming from fishing and hunting licenses. So the government put out a survey asking, would you be willing to pay X amount of dollars on your boat And that money would go towards a program to try and deal with aquatic invasive species and enhance our surveillance at the borders. Well, guess what the response was? We're not getting any type of extra license on the boats in Alberta because everybody said, no, not going to do it. We don't want to do it. Why should I have it? It's just another tax, right? Perhaps maybe it was sold poorly, and maybe it could have been packaged a little bit better as to why this is really important, the long-term cost of having mussels in our water bodies, and how much it's going to cost you to fix your engine when those things start to get sucked up into your $50,000 engine. That wasn't done, but that would be a way of getting users to put money into a real issue, a real conservation issue that has nothing to do with just hunters or anglers. It's an everybody uses the water body issue. It's the people who live on the lakeshore issue. Everybody should be thinking about, how do I put money towards this problem to make sure it doesn't become a giant problem? And in some jurisdictions, all I have to do is look where mussels have become endemic, and it's a multi-million-dollar problem every year for people. So I think that's a good example of a miss.
And those are some really strong points, Todd. Things I hadn't thought about, like the boat thing, the invasive mussels. And the one that really struck me was, even though folks are not paying a backcountry license, a user fee, whatever, they're still, through democracy, through voting, determining what the priorities are in the landscape. And you gave the example of the grizzly bear hunt being closed in BC. That wasn't a whole bunch of, I've got my non-hunting grizzly bear license and I pay just as much as the hunting license grizzly bear tag. Therefore, I want to say there's more of us than you. We set the priorities. But what is interesting about that one in BC is, yes, the majority of the province, voting citizens, convinced a government that came into power, this isn't what we want anymore with our wildlife. But since that ban took effect and the decision was made in December 2017, spring of 2018 was the first year that the hunt was actually closed. Over $750,000 has been continued to be invested in grizzly bear research, habitat work, and grizzly bear conservation from money that comes from hunters' license fees, guide license fees, outfitters' license fees, anglers, and trappers, because they are the only groups in the province that are mandated by law to pay into the conservation fund that then grants and puts all this money back out. So,
right. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one where there was a lot of talk about the bear viewing, the bear tourism industry stepping up and having a user fee. It's been 10 years. It's never happened. Hunters, and their other partners, sportsmen, are still paying for grizzly bear conservation in the province, more than what the government's actually paying for it too. So, little sidebar, little digression from Alberta. Yeah, that's such a strong point. So whether they're paying into it or not, they're having the say. So that's definitely, or they're having the influence, I guess.
Yeah. Like, I really think the real concern comes is if you're getting a bunch of non-hunting people sitting in the room deciding on things like mule deer allocations or moose allocation, like how is this particular species going to be managed? Then that's where hunters should be concerned. Well, okay, these people are not directly involved with this, or if they are, what is their motivation here? Clearly isn't going to be the same as us. But on a broader scale, usually not species specific, those people are already getting a say just as part of the general public and with their voices.
Yeah, excellent point. One of the points I want to drill down with you on here is, let's look forward. Say Alberta does have a system where other users, backpack hikers, photographers, that bird watchers do have a license. They are contributing. Those funds are coming to ACA. They're a lot. They're double, tripling, your operating budget. You're going, great. We're doing more things for Albertans, for the resource. How would you envision ACA moving forward in a model like that, but still ensuring that hunters, the traditional leadership, the heritage that they have that's been attached to being conservation leaders, they're not alienated or overshadowed by another resource group, contributing into this as well? How would you continue to not let them be diluted, I guess is the word?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm a really strong believer in collaboration. I think figuring out where we can work together always accomplishes a heck of a lot more than working apart or working against each other, obviously. So when it comes to things like backcountry, like hikers, well, we've got a good number of Albertan hunters who like to go backcountry hiking. They just happen to carry a gun with them when they do it. So we'd be looking for, well, where's the overlap? Where's the benefit that we could see to both the hunting and the strictly just hiking without a gun? Where would we find projects that both groups would be happy with? And we do that all the time. Well, Species at Risk is a very good example. We purchase habitat for sage grouse, southern Alberta. So we meet the requirements to try and improve sage grouse, the likelihood of sage grouse surviving. But it turns out it's also really good habitat for pronghorn. Well, hunters are going to be pretty happy with that. They're not going to be upset we spent money on sage grouse because it wasn't just sage grouse. It was habitat for a wide range of species. So it'd be similar sort of idea if we're looking at as you suggest, backcountry hiking. There's all kinds of hunters that would be interested in projects that we could do related to backcountry hiking. And even if it is a matter of improving trails, well, I don't know about you, but walking up a nice trail to get to where you need to go isn't a half bad thing when you're hunting either, right? So there's lots of areas where I could see the overlap. The other thing that would be important to do is to make sure those people who are funding us that are the non-hunters do, as I said at the beginning, understand what is being achieved by the funding that hunters and anglers are providing. That the average hunter isn't just interested in the species that they hunt. There's no hunter that I know of that, well, I don't care if all these other species are gone. I only want to be able to shoot my moose. That's just not why we're interested in being out there in the first place. We're interested in everything out there in nature and making sure we can conserve that. And it's something I know a lot of hunters don't talk about, and some of them might not even want to admit, but a lot of hunters have no problem with just sitting there for a moment and just looking at the surroundings and enjoying what is there, which means they're just interested in conserving the environment, not necessarily that particular species. If you're hunting it that day, you certainly want to make sure it's there. You want lots of them for sure, but overall, we're much broader than just the species we're hunting.
Yeah, it's such strong points. Like I love the way you're articulating this. Do you think part of this whole equation is just folks not understanding each other? People being scared of hunters because they don't know what hunters are. They have this mental image. Hunters thinking about the person in the urban environment as a certain archetype, and they automatically don't like hunting. So you got these groups that people that don't understand each other. With that comes, I'm fearful that if these groups, contributed and had a say, they would want to take my hunting away. Or another group would be, I'm fearful that if we do things and the hunters are just going to want to go in there and we've recovered sage grouse, now they want to go shoot them. There's this fear and misunderstandings. Do you think that might drive some of the cultural tensions between groups of just saying like, hey, let's everybody be mandated to pay for conservation? Do you think there's an element of fear in there?
I don't think it's just an element. I think it's a major part of it. And it's
okay.
Unfortunately, it's not just in this topic. In the world that we're living today, it's us and them, it's black and white, it's left and right. There is no middle anymore, right? We've lost the middle in society. You either agree with me or you don't. There's no let's talk about it and get to the middle, right? Because one of the problems is it doesn't make very interesting social media if you and I disagree and then decide, well, let's talk it out and come to an agreement. That's not fun. Like, that's not what people are interested in. What they want to see is for me to disagree with you and us just to yell at each other for half an hour. Like, I bet you get more people listening to your podcast if that's what we did for an hour and a half. We just yelled back and forth at one another. And then at the end, we hated each other and we stomped off. Like that's just the world we're in right now, unfortunately. So that's a big...
It's a good idea. I'll do anything for likes.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's a big sort of large cultural issue to have to overcome in the first place. Yeah, there'll be people on the extremes on every issue, and we'll have it here too. There'll be extreme hunters that are never going to listen to anybody else that says something they don't agree with, and there'll be extreme on the other side, anti-hunters. But there are a huge number of people in the middle that we should be able to figure out how to pull them in. I think there's a large number of people, well, certainly if you ask them, the majority of people say, oh yeah, I'd like to support conservation. when you ask them how much money they've put into it lately, it is always zero, but they want to. So giving them a mechanism to do it would be the first thing. But certainly sitting down and talking about, well, what are your concerns? And let's talk about hunting. Most people who don't hunt don't really understand that much about it. And unfortunately, what they do see is they see the hyped up stuff where someone's done something ridiculous on the internet and that hits the news. And, next thing you know, you got somebody is throwing a spear from a tree to kill an animal. And that, remember that a few years ago? That did not go over well. But nobody really got the real story of any of that. It was just, a little snippet, got hyped up, it got turned into a bad thing. And so overcoming those kinds of things is really, that's the challenge going forward as far as I'm concerned, is how do you get the information out about what hunting is really about, how it relates to conservation, to a public that generally only listens to a few seconds at a time, right? And it's not just them saying, oh, non-hunters, everybody's like that nowadays. Hunters are the same way. A couple seconds is all anybody listens nowadays. So that really creates a huge communication issue. As you know, you're in that industry. You know this, right? You're trying to figure out what key phrases do I need to make sure are hit when you're doing the intro to this so people keep listening, right? And what image are you going to use to try and sell this podcast? Because it's just going to be a second they're going to look at. If they don't like it, they're going to move on. All those kinds of, nobody takes the time to really stop and think and have a real conversation anymore. And we have to get back there to make this work. I honestly believe that if we were to introduce some type of, as long as we didn't call it a tax, but a tax called by something else, a levy, which is what we call it on hunting and fishing licenses. I think if we introduced a levy around outdoor equipment, like say, boats and paddles and canoes and binoculars and whatever it might be, I think the average person in Alberta would say, yeah, okay, as long as we could say this is what's going to be used for, not just wave our hands and say conservation, but some concrete things that in the first 5 years, here's where we think we're going to put these funds towards. Now, that's the approach that ACA has done. Anytime we've looked to try and raise hunting and fishing licenses, we've gone out to our stakeholders to say, here's the projects we look to do in the next 5 years with these new funds you're providing. And once you do that, most people are saying, okay, yeah, I can get behind that. Those are worthwhile things that I support, so I'll give you some more of my money. And I think if we did a similar thing in Alberta and probably across the country, if you just sat down and talked to people about, here's what we think to do. Everybody thinks conservation is important. And so just talking to them about, here's what we would do. Are you willing to, over the span of a year, spend an extra $50, let's say, would end up coming out of your pocket based on the levy we've put on these items? Are you okay with that? Most people would be, I think.
I agree. I think they would. It's just the package has to go with that. Like you gave
Absolutely.
The one, like sort of the failure with the boating one, right? And it got scuttled pretty quick. And if we broaden this discussion even further, like kind of away from conservation, where it's nature and wildlife that are benefiting from this investment, there's so much more out there for everybody in the outdoors that could benefit from a user benefit pay model. Could be, you mentioned it, like trails, like who's maintaining horse trails. It's a parking lot. It's the facilities it's all of these things. It's signage, it's maps, it's waypoints that can be downloaded. Like there's so much out there if the money was available, because we see in the United States too, we see infrastructure for the outdoor community falling apart.
Yep.
Literally. And when there's enough money where we're taking care of nature and the most vulnerable species there, then there's the opportunity to enhance how people can interact with nature through some mandatory taxes like equipment. That's just such an obvious one. Like I mentioned before, the Dingle Johnson in the US, part of that goes on marine fuels. Mm-hmm. So again, you just fill up a boat at a marine station or the marine fuel, like you're paying that tax, and that's going to go back into a dock, a boat ramp, an invasive aquatic species program or whatever. We also have one here in southeastern BC. It's not in all of the regional districts, but there's a conservation tax on people's properties in some jurisdictions. It's based on your assessed value of your property and your home, there's a little conservation fee comes off. There's a similar organization that gets that money and then they invest it, through various projects, just like what you do. There has been regional districts that have voted it down. It's just like, nope, this is another tax on us as landowners and over our dead body kind of thing. And then there's other community areas that have embraced it and they're paying for grassland restoration work, securing some corridors, so on and so on. Is there anything in Alberta that's like land tax based that you know of?
Not that I'm aware of. No, I mean, there may be some communities that have done something, but not that I'm aware of. But I think what you just said, there's a good point. This is just another tax. And that would be the key, right? Is to make it so it's not just another tax. It isn't just money that's flowing off to the government to disappear someplace. It goes to a specific organization to do specific things that have already been identified, right? So every 5 years, you as the person paying the tax can go and check, did you actually do what you said you were going to do? So I think having some type of scorecard, that makes it different, right? Very rarely do we pay government taxes where there's a scorecard to say, did you do what you said you were going to do? Like, I don't have kids in school anymore, but yet I'm paying school tax. And all I hear is how bad things are at school. Well, then what are my taxes doing, right? Like there's no scorecard as to what is happening. That's where I see that we would need to, again, it's how you market it, right? Make it into it's just not a tax. This is very different. This is what we want to achieve with this tax. This is what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and this is when it's going to be achieved. And if by the end we haven't achieved it, well, then someone's got to answer for that. And that's like I say, been our approach at ACA this whole time. Every time we ask for an increase in funding from hunters and anglers, we've said we want to do. We have our annual reports to show it. And if in the end we haven't done that, well, unfortunately, I'm the guy that where the buck literally stops with me. If I have to answer for it, I have to stand in front of the stakeholders and say, well, this is why we didn't achieve it, and apologize for that, and tell them what I'm going to do different next time. Or they say, well, we're just not going to fund you next time. Simple as that. You ask for the next dollar, we'll say no, we don't trust you anymore. So it's important from our organization standpoint to make sure that we follow through with what we're doing. And I think if we make sure that that is where this money is going, it becomes a lot easier sell. It isn't just flowing off to the government again. It's what becomes a trusted organization is taking these money, an organization that believes in what it is you're giving the money for in the first place. And I think
beautiful.
To me, that's what makes it happen.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I'm just in, when you're saying scorecard, I'm envisioning one of those gigantic electronic billboards on the side of the highway. And it's like, I'm going up to Edmonton like I was a couple of days ago. And it's like, there's the scorecard, Albertans, some metrics going across there where your conservation dollars have done this and X so many more plovers than there was this time last year, but whatever. Like, wow, would that ever be like out there, like leading edge in people's faces? So that's
I think
where we should go. Let's do a billboard.
One of the other opportunities we have, I think, and that we've really missed out on the conservation side of things is we always come out as biologists, as hunters, as people who are just passionate about the wildlife side of things. And we try to push that. Like, we need to conserve this because it's important to conserve this. It's valuable because it's valuable to us, the intrinsic value. It's hard to put a price tag on that. I know people have, tried to run economics and say it's worth this much, and that's fine. But we've done a poor job of looking at, on the hunting and fishing side, for instance, what is the economic benefit of hunting and fishing in the province? That's one part of it. And we don't have, I think the last time we've done any type of survey in Alberta here, and it's got to be at least 8 years since we've done any type of economic assessment of the value of hunting and angling, trapping, outfitting in Alberta. But the other thing that is becoming a bigger and bigger issue all the time are, what are the health benefits? Right? Healthcare is a huge cost to any provincial government in this province. And you don't have to go very far to find research that says the huge benefits of people being outside, the benefits of people doing something relaxing like fishing, although it depends how successful you are. It can become a very frustrating process as well. But, for the most part, people say, it was very relaxing being on that lake or on that shoreline. We've never really tapped into what is the potential to save money from provincial coffers if we did more on the conservation side and got more people outside and dealt with more stress issues, more health-related issues, and reduced the number of people heading into a hospital or see a doctor. To me, that's a huge area that we are missing out on there that we all know exists. We all know there's that benefit there. And like I say, there's research sort of has been nibbling around the edges as to it's good for people to be outside. It's good for people to see sunshine. It's good for people to be at a lake shore. But we really haven't done a very good job of quantifying, okay, if we put X amount of dollars into conservation and make these types of facilities available or this type of habitat available, what is the benefit on the other side that could save a ton of money?
I see, kind of like an ROI for, say, healthcare. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's great. That's great thinking. I like that. Boy, that would be worth funding a master's or PhD student or something like, hey, are you interested? Somebody that's in economics or something. So Howie up at the University of Alberta, that sounds like something that would be up his kind of field. So maybe we got some funds or support a couple grad students on that. What an excellent idea. Wow, there's just so many great things. And it's one of the things I love about Alberta. Just everybody there in every sector is innovative in their thinking. Like everybody is always looking to improve, how to do better. Like you've just got this entrepreneurial spirit, this energy of just wanting to lead, wanting to improve, wanting to do better. See that in industry. I see that, in your cities improving themselves. And I definitely see it in hunting and conservation and everything that goes on in that particular realm. It's just people are out there being the leaders that the rest of the country can look to. And I think Alberta Conservation Association is the model, in my opinion, in Canada. So if anybody out there is setting up or in a similar organization, drill down on the Alberta Conservation Association and model what they're doing, copy, because it's a great program. You're a great leader leading a great organization. So really valued this conversation. Appreciate it, Todd.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been great. Really appreciate your support.
Yeah, dived into some maybe, you thought it was going to be prickly things. Do you think you came out of it okay? I think you balanced everybody that's supporting the ACA kind of saw themselves in there somewhere. But, I think kind of one of the last things on that, and you had said this several times, is you talked about stakeholders, broad stakeholders, coalitions, groups, diverse backgrounds. And that is something that I see a lot of in Alberta. Very large roundtables that are talking about what to do with the Minister's Special License Auction funds. Like that's a huge table. You have a huge board. Like that's 18 people, and any other organization would be considered unwieldy to have a board that big. But you've got the stakeholder representation through that, I assume, which gives you the transparency that you're delivering for all Albertans.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everybody's sitting at our table, and there's no doubt there's some days it's a little unwieldy, but like I say, everybody there. When I first took this job, that was my number one concern. I did not want to come to an organization where the board was dysfunctional. With that many people at the table, was anything actually getting done, or was it just, one fight after another? And it turns out, no, it has been quite functional. There's no doubt. I mean, don't get me wrong. There has been some disputes over the year. There's no doubt about it. But, overall, it runs really well because there's a lot of, I think the groups there have developed the respect for one another as the different groups, understanding that in the end, we're all looking to get to the same end goal. We're all looking to do good things for conservation. We just might disagree sometimes on how to get there, what the method is to get there, but and that seems to work so far. Anyways, I'm still there. I plan to stay here for a little while longer.
And that's I think a key takeaway. People are all wanting the same thing. We just have to stop and recognize sometimes we have some slight differences, but at the end of the day, we're all focused on the same thing. And I think any group, any couple, any organization can continue to work together when you see that. And I think that's a key thing I've taken away from all of the examples that you've shared. So thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Curtis? take it away. Close us
Right
out.
on. The Hunter Conservationist Podcast is brought to you by J. Martin Taxidermy. When I was doing my intro sponsor role for Jesse, I said that he's in a clean and modern facility. I like how on his website he's got that in kind of like the about page, because I think sometimes if you think taxidermy shop, it's kind of like throws off this like eclectic mad scientist vibe. I know my grandparents' taxidermy shop, it was kind of that mad scientist-y kind of thing, weird stuff hanging up here and there and bundles of binder twine all over the place. And so I think he may be.
There was a dehydrated domestic cat in our family's taxidermy shop because my father-in-law was like, it's got all the same body proportions as a cougar and everything. It's a study piece, and it was just friggin' dried out, and it was like hanging up in the rafters.
When they sold and we were cleaning out some of the deep freezes, there was a giant python, like boa constrictor that wasn't even in a bag. It was just like curled up, frozen in the freezer, like just kind of all this like weird stuff. And anyway, so I think Jesse is not one of those mad scientist type. So you don't have to feel intimidated going into his shop where you're like, what's going on here? Like, where's the
leave my trophy here?
Where's the weirdness? But yeah, as always, Jesse, super professional, does amazing work. And we're super stoked that he's renewed with us for another year as our title sponsor. So thank you, Jesse, and congrats on the 3rd year running as the longest now title sponsor on the podcast. So thank you, Jesse.
Excellent. So remember my offer at the start. If you can correctly tell me what the shape of the eyeballs are in the work that Jesse does, we'll get you a Wild Origins Canada decal. Just to close out, I just want to leave you a couple thoughts for you to reflect on what Todd talked about in this episode and kind of the theme. Should conservation remain primarily hunter-funded, or is it time to broaden the coalition of citizens who are also stepping up and paying directly for conservation? If that coalition of other users were to happen, how do we ensure, or should we ensure, that hunters' legacy for carrying the load of conservation for the last couple of centuries in North America is still honored? That's still part of the tradition and heritage of hunting. But being able to do that at the same time in welcoming new voices to conservation. How do we do that? Thanks for listening, folks, and we will see you in the next episode.